Breaking news. The Detroit Lions just got a double dose of good news, and if you're a fan, you're going to love it. But before we get started, make sure you've hit the like button if you've been a Detroit Lions fan for over 15 years. If possible, write something like this: Go Lions. One pride. Think about it. What if I told you that the Lions may have just landed one of the best value signings in free agency, while also being tied to a proven pass rusher who can take the defense to the next level? Sounds pretty good, right? Let's break it down. First, let's talk about Levi Onwuzurike. Remember him? If you forgot, you're not alone. A lot of people have written him off, but the Lions clearly haven't. Pro Football Focus just called his new contract one of the best value deals of the offseason. We're talking about a guy who had 47 quarterback pressures last season and still managed a 70 PFF grade despite everything he's been through. And here's the kicker. The Lions brought him back for just $4 million. PFF projected he should be making around $10 million per year based on his talent, age, and production. Instead, Detroit secured him for less than half that price. That's a win. And when you look at the defensive line, it's starting to take shape in a way that should have fans excited. With DJ Reader anchoring the middle and Roy Lopez, who's been quietly solid against the run, joining the rotation, things are looking up. And don't forget, Aleem McNeill will be back soon. This group could be one of the most underrated defensive lines in the league if they stay healthy. But wait, there's more. The second piece of good news? The Lions are being linked to Matthew Juden. Yeah, the same Matthew Juden who, before getting injured last year, was a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. Now, is he still a number one edge rusher at this stage? Maybe not. But as a number 2 guy in Detroit's system, that could be a perfect fit. The Lions don't need him to be the dominant force he was in New England. They just need another strong, complementary piece to solidify the pass rush. And considering that Brad Holmes has been vocal about building through the trenches, this move would fit exactly what the Lions are trying to do. Holmes and the front office have been smart about how they're handling free agency. No overpaying for aging, overhyped guys. No massive multi-year deals for players whose best football is behind them. Instead, they're adding value pieces like Levi Onwuzurike and Roy Lopez while keeping the flexibility to make a splash move if the right opportunity comes along, like Juden. And let's not forget about the draft. This year's class is absolutely loaded with defensive talent, especially on the edge. The Lions are going to find a pass rusher at some point. It's just a matter of when. Whether that's early in the draft or as a depth piece later on, you can bet that Detroit is going to keep investing in its defensive front. Now, let's talk about the cornerbacks for a second. Losing Carlton Davis could have been a major issue, but the Lions wasted no time replacing him with DJ Reed. And with guys like Ennis Rakestraw and Amick Robertson in the mix, Detroit suddenly has some real depth at the position. They didn't panic. They didn't overreact. They just reloaded and moved on. And that brings us to the bigger picture. The Lions are playing smart, disciplined football, both on the field and in roster construction. They're not just throwing money at problems and hoping it works out. They're making calculated, strategic moves to keep this team competitive for the long haul. Think about how far this team has come. 2 years ago, the Lions couldn't even string together back-to-back wins. Now, they haven't lost consecutive games in 2 seasons. That's not luck. That's a team that's built the right way. And looking ahead, with a defensive line that's shaping up to be a strength, solid depth at corner, and the potential for a game-changing addition in Matthew Juden, the Lions are positioning themselves to make another deep playoff run. But I want to hear from you. What do you think? Is Levi Onwuzurike's deal the best value move of the offseason? Should the Lions go all in on Juden? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about it.
And here's something to really think about. If the Lions do land Matthew Juden, what does that mean for this defense? We're talking about a guy who, before his injury last season, was still playing at a high level. In 2022, he racked up 15.5 sacks for the Patriots. Even in just 4 games last season, before tearing his triceps, he managed 4.5 sacks. That's serious production. The Lions wouldn't need him to be that guy every single down, but imagine a rotation with Juden, Aiden Hutchinson, and the depth they already have. That's a nightmare for opposing offenses. And speaking of depth, that's where this Lions front office has really excelled. They've built a roster that doesn't crumble when injuries hit. Look at last season. When key players went down, the Lions didn't just collapse. They adjusted, guys stepped up, and they kept winning. That's why the Levi Onwuzurike signing is such a big deal. He's the kind of player that gives Detroit options. If someone goes down, they're not scrambling to find a replacement. And if he stays healthy, well, the Lions may have just gotten an absolute steal at $4 million. Now, let's talk about something that fans might not be thinking about enough: how this defense is being built for the long haul. Brad Holmes isn't just trying to make a one-year push. He's setting this team up for sustained success. That's why they didn't panic in free agency. They could have overpaid for a big-name defensive end or reached for a player that didn't fit their long-term plan, but they didn't. Instead, they're finding value, keeping cap flexibility, and making sure this team can compete not just this year, but for years to come. And let's not forget about the draft. The Lions have been absolutely nailing their draft picks in recent years. Aiden Hutchinson, Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the list goes on. They know how to find impact players. So even if they don't sign Juden, don't be surprised if they land a future star pass rusher in the draft. With the depth in this year's class, there's a very real chance that the Lions walk away with a difference maker on the defensive line. But what about the offense? Because let's be real, this team is still built around Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and that explosive unit. The offense carried the Lions at times last season, but we all saw what happened when the defense struggled. That's why this offseason has been so focused on improving the defensive front. The thinking is simple: if the Lions can dominate the trenches, everything else falls into place. And speaking of domination, let's talk about last season for a second. How quickly we forget just how good this team was. The Lions didn't just win games, they controlled them. They blew teams out. They went into San Francisco and handled business. They didn't lose back-to-back games all year. That's the sign of a team that's built the right way. Now, looking at 2024, the expectations are even higher. This team isn't sneaking up on anyone anymore. They're one of the top contenders in the NFC, and everyone knows it. That's why these offseason moves matter so much. It's not about getting lucky, it's about making the right moves to stay on top. So here's the big question: do you think the Lions should go all in on Juden, or should they keep their flexibility and look to the draft? And what about Levi Onwuzurike? Are we underrating just how good he could be this year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going. And here's the real key to all of this: the Lions aren't just making moves for the sake of making moves. They're being strategic, calculated, and disciplined. Look around the league. How many teams have already made desperate signings, throwing money at guys whose best years are behind them? The Lions? They are playing that game. They've stuck to their plan, and that's what's setting them apart. Think about how this team used to operate. There was a time when Detroit would overpay for mid-tier free agents, hoping for a quick fix. And what happened? Nothing but disappointment. Now, under Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, this team is making smart, long-term decisions. The Levi Onwuzurike contract is a perfect example. They could have let him walk, assumed he wouldn't be the same player after his injuries. But instead, they saw the value, looked at his production, and got him on an incredible deal. If he stays healthy, that's a $10 million player they got for $4 million. That's how championship teams operate. And let's go back to the defensive line for a second, because it really is the key to everything. If the Lions can build a dominant front, everything else gets easier. Look at what San Francisco and Philadelphia have done in recent years. Those teams win in the trenches. That's the blueprint. That's why getting DJ Reader was so important. Now, here's where you come in. Do you think the Lions should pull the trigger on Juden, or would you rather see them go all in on a pass rusher in the draft? And what about this defensive line? Are we underestimating just how good it can be? Let me know in the comments, and let's get this conversation started.